going on, everybody? Welcome to a special edition of All In with Nate as I cover the 5th through 7th pick in the NFL draft. Those picks are, of course, held by the Chargers, the Giants, and the Tennessee Titans. So we're gonna get a chance to start real soon. Hope y'all enjoying your April so far. But we're gonna start off talking about the Los Angeles Chargers. But before we get into the Chargers, let's hit a quick preview of the Chargers coming up.
First up, the Los Angeles Chargers. They entered last season with Super Bowl on their mind. They had one of the most talented rosters in the National Football League, and led by head coach Brandon Staley, it turned out to be an absolute disaster. They finished the season 5-12. He got fired on December 15th. Both the head coach and the GM, Tom Telesco, got fired after a horrible 63-21 loss against the Las Vegas Raiders. They came into the offseason and did a lot of changes. They went and hired former NFL head coach and Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh, who's coming off winning a national championship in college football, who will look to revamp this roster. If you remember, he was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers for 4 or 5 seasons. He took them to a Super Bowl appearance back in 2012, and he will look to revamp Justin Herbert and this Chargers offense to a contender. They entered the draft with 9 picks in the draft, including pick number 5. Now join us as we talk about the key position needs, what are the mocks projecting, and what is my own personal projections for the Chargers. Up next, Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay, that's a quick preview of the Chargers. The Chargers entered this off-season, in an interesting situation. They're basically over the cap. They were like almost $30 million over the cap. They had to restructure Joey Bosa's contract. They had to restructure Khalil Mack's contract. They were able to keep Joey Bosa. However, they had to trade the likes of Keenan Allen to the Bears, as I mentioned in the previous show. They moved Mike Williams. They actually cut Mike Williams. He's now a member of the New York Jets. So they're coming in a situation where they were trying to get under the cap with a new head coach. So they have some interesting needs. I'm pretty sure that the first need I'm going to go ahead and put my needs up on the board. My needs for the Chargers are wide receiver, cornerback, offensive lineman, defensive tackle, and running back. I'm going to go down why those are my needs for this team. The wide receiver one should be a no-brainer. Their receiving core at this moment, as we stand, is Joshua Palmer, second-year receiver Quentin Johnson, who I had very high hopes in. He didn't do as well as he could have did first season, and Darius Davis, who's another member of the TCU receiving core from that national title team in 2022. That's their receiving core right now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That pick at 5 is going to be the board. If Marvin Harrison is not the guy that's gone at 4, Marvin Harrison is going to be a Los Angeles Charger. If it's not him, it's going to be Malik Neighbors. But you absolutely have to get Justin Herbert a solid wide receiver and some solid weapons, because you had to get rid of the two of his best receivers because they were broke. Let's just be honest. They were broke as a team. So they had to get that team together through the draft now. So they're in a prime position at number 5 to go get the best wide receiver on the board, whether it's Malik Neighbors, whether it's Marvin Harrison. I think it's going to end up being Malik Neighbors at this spot, depending on what happens at 4 with Arizona, because as I said in my previous show, the Cardinals could be a team that could be trading down. So don't sleep on that being a move for them. The other position is cornerback. Cornerback, they did bring in Christian Fulton, the former Tennessee Titan corner, out of free agency. But their corners right now are Asante Samuel, Deion Leonard, and Jasir Taylor. But they need another solid corner on the outside because Leonard and Taylor are improving. Let's just be honest. Asante Samuel is solid, but he has a couple weaknesses in his game. But I don't think that the Chargers go corner on day number 1, but day number 2, do not be surprised if they consider going to get a corner in day 2, because they will need to address that opposite side. They could look at a guy like a Kamari Lassiter. If they decide to trade back, it could be a possible Nate Wiggins move, a Kool-Aid McKinstry move. A Cooper DeJean could be a consideration at that spot, but they have to get a corner to pair up with Asante Samuel Jr. for the foreseeable future. That's another position that I have them going. Offensive line is another position that you do not sleep on for the Chargers. Yes, they have solid line play, but they have a new offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, who came from Baltimore. As you know, they're going to go make sure that they address, especially center, because I think Corey Linsley is going to retire at some point. He may retire before the season. It could be next season, but you are going to be looking to get a center in this draft of some point. And then Greg Roman likes to run the football. You're going to have to get you a solid offensive line to be able to run block because you don't have Austin Ekeler no more. He's with the Commanders, so that's going to be a consideration to look at down the road for them. Another position is interior off defensive line. Sebastian Joseph Day was cut late in the season. Austin Johnson's going for free agency. And then if you look at the Chargers' defensive tackles, they're not that good because the Chargers are technically a 3-4 defense, so Bosa and Mack lines up on the outside. However, they need somebody up front to create havoc to stop the run. And if you're the Chargers, that's a spot that you look into in at some point throughout the draft. It could be a late pick or even after the draft. Another position here that I mentioned is running back. Losing Austin Ekeler is huge for the Chargers. He was a do-it-all running back. Their starting running back at this moment is Gus Edwards. This might get a lot of people may not agree with what I'm saying about Gus Edwards. I am not a Gus Edwards fan. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not a Gus Edwards fan. So you need you a solid running back. And this is a draft where you can go get a late round back. May go get a Trey Benson, a Kendall Milton, one of those backs that are going to be on the board to start day number 3. I don't think it's going to be an early pick for running back either because running backs are a dime a dozen in this league. But let me hit some of these comments real quick before I continue. Tyreek, what's going on, bro? Duke, what's going on, man? Facebook user, I'm not sure who you are, said, do the Chargers take multiple wide receivers in this draft? I can see it. This is a deep wide receiver class. I think they're going to get their pick at either wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in the class. And then you can go double down and get you a guy later in the draft because it's just that much talent throughout the draft at wide receiver for sure. Catching up on the other comments, Byron said not draft related. What are your thoughts on the Bears building a dome stadium? They should have had one years ago. When they first did Soldier Field 20 some odd years ago, they should have became a dome stadium right then. They're one of the few, I think, up there outside of course, like Green Bay and a team like that has a classic stadium. They don't have it. So they should have went and got one, especially in their particular city. Moving on, all lines should be the pick there. That could be a consideration. I don't know if they actually picked that position. Tevin, what's going on? Darius Adele said, tear down, build over with Harbaugh and Halbert. That's exactly what they're going to probably do at this point. And I see a couple of projections. Ryan said Malik Neighbors to the Chargers. Frank Green said that one of these 3 could be their wide receiver. AJ Brown, what's going on, bro? Checking in, saying wide receiver. And Base, what's going on, bro? But yeah, I think it's going to be a wide receiver for the Chargers at pick number 5 as well, because the Chargers are desperately in need of that position. So to show you guys what some of the mocks are saying, Walter Football has Malik Neighbors being drafted by the Chargers at 5, which would make perfect sense. They're saying that Marvin Harris will be off the board at number 4. So that would be the second best guy on the board. Moving along to CBS Sports, Ryan Wilson has the Chargers trading down to number 11 with the Minnesota Vikings. He has them doubling up on 2 of their needs. He has them taking Talise Fuaga, the left tackle out of Oregon State, really solid offensive lineman, and Nate Wiggins, the really solid corner out of Clemson, who blazed this 40 time at the combine, but he was also solid for Clemson in general. So I could see the Chargers being a trade down destination as well. So don't sleep on that as a possible move. The next guy for CBS Sports, Chris Rapasso said Marvin Harrison Jr. That would be a great fit for that Chargers offense, a great fit for a quarterback like a Justin Herbert. Also, Another person that projected Marvin Harrison is Josh Edwards. He has them taking Marvin Harrison as well. That would be a pick of the crop right there if you're picking him at 5, considering that there was a point in time he was considered as the first or second best player off the board. And I still think he's one of the best prospects coming out of the draft. But of course, because of the QB need and the top 3 to 4, he may slip into the number 5 into a prime position with the Chargers. And then last but not least, you got Tom Fornelli for the CBS Sports saying that the Chargers trade down to 10 with the Jets and still take Talise Fuaga, the left tackle out of Oregon State, which is also not a bad move. You may pick up another pick for day number 2 or day number 3. And I also think the Chargers will stay pat and go wide receiver. But if they did consider going another position, then you might look at an option of going after a Rome Odunze in the pick 10 or 11. But that could be another potential trade out spot, just something to watch out for as the draft gets closer. But that's my take on the Chargers at this moment. And we're going to move it over to the number 6 pick on the board, the New York Giants. But before I get into the Giants, let's get a quick preview of the New York Giants.
Up next, the New York Giants. Coming off a playoff appearance in 2022, they were hoping to keep trucking in the right direction. However, the Giants season became an absolute disaster. They finished the season with a 6-11 record and missed the playoffs altogether. And Daniel Jones regressed after getting that big extension after the playoff appearance. So they're not even sure what they're going to do at the QB position, or will they be looking to get a replacement in this draft. Also, they lost franchise running back Saquon Barkley to the division rival Philadelphia Eagles. So that was a big loss to this roster. They come in with the 6th pick in the draft. We will look to see what they're going to do, because at this moment, they currently have a below average offensive line, but they did make one key splash in the free agency, trading for Carolina Panthers star pass rusher Brian Burns. So that's going to be a big weapon for the future, especially on defense. Now, let's get ready to talk about their key needs. What are the mocks saying that the Giants are going to do, and what is my own projection for the New York Giants? Coming up next at number 6, the New York Giants.
Down the sideline, Simmons into the end zone, touchdown.
All righty, moving on to pick number 6, the Chargers. The Giants. Before I get started, let me see. Frank Green said that they robbed the Panthers. They didn't even trade for. Listen, Carolina's supposed to got 2 first-round picks for him in 2022. The Rams offered him, so that would have been a great addition for the Panthers, considering they ended up trading up anyways to go get Bryce Young last year. So they could have handled that a lot better than they did. So the Panthers organization kind of mishandled that situation. But as we talk about the Giants are in a weird position. They came off of a postseason appearance only to fall apart last season. Daniel Jones was not good at quarterback. He was hurt. They had to go with multiple quarterbacks at one point. Tyrod Taylor played QB. Tommy DeVito played QB. It was a mess out there at QB for the Giants. And then, of course, the season didn't go that well. So you put all that money into Daniel Jones, only for Daniel Jones to absolutely fall off last season. And now you're even looking at a position where they may just consider getting a quarterback at 6. So they kind of put themselves in a rough position. But some of my needs, we put my needs for the Giants up on the board before I get started. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. My needs for the Giants are quarterback, wide receiver, corner, and running back. So, of course, the quarterback situation, you just paid Daniel Jones 4 years for $160 million. So this could be an interesting situation, because you just invested in a quarterback. And now you're saying he's not going to work out. We're going to move on. We're not going to even deal with this. So what do? You put $160 million in this man's hands. And now you're saying we may go another direction. So you kind of put yourself in a bad position at the QB position by immediately investing after the playoff appearance. It is no disrespect to Daniel Jones, but let's just be honest. you aren't worth $160 million to even be in that spot. And look at you now. So stupid position for the Giants to be in, but hey, they made that bed for themselves. Also, wide receiver is another spot. If the Giants decide they're going to give Daniel Jones another season to get it together, he needs a true number one wide receiver. Let's be real. Who's the last wide receiver number one you remember in the Giants uniform? Odell Beckham Jr. That's the last time I remember them having a consistent number one receiver. They paid, really, Kenny Galladay robbed them a couple years ago. They drafted Jalen Hyatt. He's not no wide receiver one. The Giants they're probably their best receiver is Darius Slayton. That's probably their best receiver at this moment on the roster. They got to get the pick of one of the best wide receivers in this class. If Daniel Jones is going to be your guy in the future, he needs a wide receiver one. You don't have one. You got to get one in this draft. There's no reason they should not walk out of day one without a skill position like wide receiver if you're the Giants in that position, of course. The other position, cornerback, they did draft Deonte Banks last year, but Adoree Jackson, he left for free agency, and he's not expected to return. So the Giants are in a situation where you put a pick on Deonte Banks' last year. You don't have a corner number two. So, I mean, what do you do at this point? You're not in a good position. And in a division where you're facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles and that stout offense, you got the Dallas Cowboys, who were one of the best offensive units in the league last season. You need secondary play in the worst way possible to keep up in just that division. Not even talking about the NFC. We're talking about that division alone. So corner's going to be one. And then the fourth one for me, it may be more obvious to a lot of other people, but running back is, of course, the position they need. They lost Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. That's a big blow for a guy who, to me, has not been the problem in why the Eagles have fallen off. Why the Giants have fallen off. They didn't want to pay him. He's stuck in a position where the running back is not appreciated no more after a certain amount of years. And it's a tough time for running backs in the National Football League, just in general. If you're not producing multiple 1,000-yard seasons, then this is what you're running into. So, and then also they signed Devin Singletary in free agency. What is Devin Singletary going to do? He is your number 2 or number 3 back. He is not a running back number 1. That is not your running back number 1. So Giants got to look in a different situation. Tevin Ratcliffe said that the Panthers taking Rob's a serious franchise. Ryan Burns said, I think Joe Alt goes here. That will be interesting for them. And what's going on, Johnny? He said that the Giants will be trash again this year. If they don't tighten up, they will be trash again this year. But moving along, Katie, what's going on, bro? I just seen your comment pop up. Let's go to see what the mocks are saying for the Giants at number 6. The first one, Walter Football, actually has the Vikings trading up to 6, and the Giants going down to 11 to take Roma Dunes and then pick up Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle out of Texas. He has been flying up the draft board, especially since the combine. He had a great combine. So he's going to be one that's going to fall to a solid team, and they're going to really appreciate having a Byron Murphy on their team. Moving on to CBS Sports, every single expert had the Giants taking Malik Nabers at 6, and Malik Nabers is next level. He's your first. He basically be what Odell Beckham was for you when you first became a Giant. I think he's going to really cook in New York. If he gets the right, you get a good QB play out of Daniel Jones, this guy could really ball and be a really solid NFL wide receiver. You just got to make sure you come out of there with a solid wide receiver. And if Marvin Harrison is gone before 6, this is your next pick. So, again, Giants, you got to get it right. I think the Giants are going to go wide receiver also, because they'd be crazy to go ahead and say, even though I know you're not happy with Daniel Jones, you made that investment into Daniel Jones. So at this point, you made that bet, you got to lay in it. So we'll see. But I think the pick is going to be Malik Nabers, the wide receiver out of LSU as well. But moving on to the third team on the board. Now, this team actually had a pretty productive offseason so far, and it's the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans went from having one of probably the lesser rosters in the National Football League to getting aggressive in free agency. They actually did a pretty good job. But before I get into the Tennessee Titans, let's hit the third and final video, giving a preview of the Tennessee Titans at pick number 7.
Last but not least, the number 7 pick Tennessee Titans. The Titans had a up and down 2023 season. They finished 6-11. They discovered a new franchise quarterback in second-round pick Will Levis. They also picked up DeAndre Hopkins. They two had a good chemistry on the field together, so you're going to be looking forward to watching them in his second season as the starting quarterback. Now, they had a couple of major changes off season. Head coach Mike Vrabel no longer is the head coach. Franchise legend Derrick Henry is now a Baltimore Raven. How did the Titans respond? They got absolutely aggressive in free agency. They added former Jaguars receiver Calvin Ridley. They had former Dallas Cowboys running back Tony Pollard. And even traded for Super Bowl winning corner L'Jarius Sneed, who was in the midst of contract disputes with the Kansas City Chiefs. But now, the Titans go into April with a couple of big moves that they need filled, and now they will look to go hit the rest of it in the draft. Now, we get ready to talk about what the Titans will do at number 7, what are the mocks saying, what's my own projections, and some of their key needs. Up next, the Tennessee Titans.
As I mentioned, the Tennessee Titans at number 7. Tennessee really did an excellent job. I think they're one of the teams that nobody's talking about, that they've done a really good job this offseason addressing key needs, because after they lost Derrick Henry, I'm like, okay, what are they going to do on offense? But picking up a Tony Pollard is a solid piece. You picked him up with Ty J. Spear, who was pretty good for the Titans in their rushing attack towards the end of last season. You still got DeAndre Hopkins. You now add Calvin Ridley to that mix, and now you give Will Levis another key weapon there. And then you go on the defensive side of the ball, and you add a couple of pieces on the defensive side of the ball. You added Kenneth Murray from the Chargers. You added Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed. So now you actually have two solid corners on both sides of the ball. You still got Caleb Farley. He can go to the slot. So now you actually have some pieces in that secondary. You still don't really have good play at safety. So that's going to be something to look into as well. But in my opinion, and I'll bring up their needs onto the mock, their number one need is the one that you see right here, is offensive tackle. They don't have solid tackles. Their tackles are Nicholas Petit-Frere and Dylan Raduns. Both of those guys are young tackles. They were not day one tackles. Will Levis is going to have to be protected in that pocket. They're not going to be able to. You're going to have to get some really solid pieces, because in my personal opinion, the Titans could address 4 of the 5 offensive line positions. Peter Skoronski was exactly what they said he was going to be. Really solid guy. Now the Titans have one of the best offensive line coaches in the National Football League. They just got in. So they're going to address this offensive line. Believe me when I tell you, it could be Joe Alt here at number 7. And I'll be shocked if it's anybody else at this point. But another need that they have is wide receiver. Because even though, hear me out, even though you brought in you have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, you still need another solid piece. DeAndre Hopkins is getting older. Calvin Ridley is going to be there for a couple of years. But as I mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins is not getting any younger. So you have to go ahead and consider making a move at that position immediately. Cornerback is still another need. Yes, you have L'Jarius Sneed. Yes, Awuzie is another solid piece in your secondary, but that could be a day 2, day 3 move, or even, as I mentioned below, a safety. Safety could be a look on day 2, maybe on Javon Bullock, maybe a Cole Bishop or James Williams. One of those guys could easily be a safety for the Tennessee Titans for the upcoming season. Another thing that the Titans, and this is a very slept on position And I think if they wasn't in desperate need for offensive line help, they would definitely go get them a defensive lineman, because I'm going to tell you guys in their depth chart right now who's their defensive tackles, or defensive end / tackles. Sebastian Joseph Day, Keandre Corbin, Jeffrey Simmons, and Harold Landry. Jeffrey Simmons, no argument with him, one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League. The rest of that position, those positions, you can pass on them. Harold Landry's not that good as he used to be. He was a really solid edge rusher at one point in time. Arden Key has never returned into a solid rusher. You got to get you some edge rushers on both sides. If you're the Tennessee Titans, you got to go ahead and get something there. In the tackle position, like I said, Jeffrey Simmons is solid. You can still look at that need later in the draft, but I do think they're going to have to walk away with maybe day 2, a pass rusher, whoever's left around day 2, because I think there's going to be a run on pass rushers mid to late in this first round into going into day 2. So they're going to have to look into getting it early. But let's see some of the comments real quick before I continue. Tevin said the Titans are going to go defense. I think they're going to go defense in day 2 and 3. I don't see it in day 1. He said probably defensive end. This is a position that they could look into. And Slime and Shine Gaming and Sports. What's going on? Appreciate you checking in. Said I'm not confident in Will. I think he's good for what they need right now, but I understand your concerns about Will Levis. I think that could be something to watch out for down the road for the Tennessee Titans. But I think at this moment, they're doing a good job putting pieces around him. So if he's not good, then you look into getting a quarterback in 25. But at this moment, it looks like he's going to be the franchise guy entering the 2024 season. But also, linebackers another need they could look into. The Titans have always had great linebacker play, not as much as a recent. They really could address that at some point in this draft. And I think that's going to be something they look into. It may be a 4th or 5th round pick. I don't think it's going to be no major need early on. So that's another thing that I think that the Titans could look into. That's going to be something to watch for when the draft appears. But what are the mocks saying? Before I get into the mocks, I think it's going to be Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. Get you a left tackle to now have with Peter Skoronski. They can actually now start putting and piecing together a stout offensive line for the future for Will Levis. But on to what the mocks had to say, Walter Football has the Titans taking Joe Alt out of Notre Dame at number 7, staying in place. Chris Trapasso, Ryan Wilson, and Josh Edwards all have Joe Alt as well. Now, Tom Fornelli also has Joe Alt, but he has the Titans trading up the 4 with the Cardinals to pick Joe Alt. So everyone is having them pick Joe Alt in the draft if you're the Tennessee Titans. So that's my take on the Titans. I'm going to be interested to see if that's even a trade-out spot for the Tennessee Titans, because they did do a good job this offseason, and I would like to see what they do to hit some key needs in this offseason as well on draft night, which is now 24 days away. But that's going to be all I have to give you guys as far as these 3 teams. I appreciate y'all tuning in. My next show is on Wednesday. I'm covering these guys right here, the Atlanta Falcons. They have their own time frame. We're going to talk about what needs they have, what we can see them doing at number 8, what are some of the other needs that's going to be addressed in this draft for my Atlanta Falcons. But until next time, this has been your 5 through 7 mock draft picks between the Chargers, the Giants, and the Titans. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Until the next time, you all have a great day. Tune into those big-time college women games tonight. But until then, this has been an episode of All In with Nate. We're checking out. You have a great start to your month of April.